Good morning, Steve. Welcome to the Preconstruction podcast.
Thank you. Good morning, Gareth.
How are you?
Thanks. Good. Thanks for having me.
Good. No, I'm delighted to have you on. There was a few people reached out to me over the last 3 or 4 weeks that recommended that I speak to you. So your reputation precedes you.
Well, very much appreciated and honored to be on. So thank you again.
Good. Well, listen, for the audience that don't know you, give us a quick overview of your background and then what you're currently doing right now.
Sure. I've grown up in the construction industry, spent almost 26 years with Clark Construction as more operationally in the very beginning, and then in the end as one of the division leaders for the company. But a year ago, I charted my own path and founded and now the CEO of ConCntric, ConCntric Inc. And we're focused on the pre-construction phase of the commercial construction industry and how we can make it better and smarter for everybody involved in all of the early front-end efforts it takes to ultimately build the great projects that are built year in and year out.
Brilliant. Love it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to digging deeper into ConCntric. But let's quickly, if we can kind of bring you back. Everyone always has a role model or a reason for getting into this mad construction world. Was there a particular influence in your life that you decided, you know what? Because I think economics was the degree of choice, or economics.
That's what I ended up with. Had tried civil engineering and moved over into economics, but I think the interest in construction just played to my talents. Very project oriented. Was very hands on with all sorts of things in high school. Just those typical summer jobs always tended to be construction oriented. So, but I had a couple of good role models. Several. One in particular, member of my family. My uncle, who was a subcontractor in the trades, in the glass and glazing trades. My lacrosse coach in high school had a millwork shop, and through all of those experiences working with and around them, just always kind of had that bug for building things.
Brilliant. And then obviously, listen, you couldn't have probably picked a better company in Clark to kind of learn the ropes. Straight into operations. Was there any, especially in those early days on the operations side, was there any standout projects that you think I really enjoyed that?
Yeah, I started, just kind of happened to fall into an internship my junior year in college at the University of Virginia. And they brought me on as an intern. And then I wound up working my senior year full-time for Clark and going to school full-time in my senior year. I think they converted me from an hourly internship to a salary position just because I was making too much in overtime. But at least that's the joke I tell. But, my very first project was building the Darden School of Business for the University of Virginia. So it was pretty fantastic because the design.
So you were building the school while attending and working for the contractor.
I was building the Graduate School of Business. I was an
Brilliant.
undergrad, different part of the campus, but that Jeffersonian architecture and working with R.A.M. Stern, and it was a great experience. Now it was a very tough project for our company financially, and it was just one of those. It was a great example, and to this day I carry a lot of the things I learned from that project. But I think I always said, you learn the lessons on one bad project, the equivalent of what you learn in 4 good projects. So I had a great introduction in a very concentrated fashion right out of the gates with that project, but went on and, was involved with several other, great office projects, university projects in that Washington, D.C. area very early in my career.
Good. Yeah, I mean, even if some of the people that we've had on, all the kind of innovative and kind of disrupting technologies or techniques have all come out of bad situations. I mean, it's the only way to learn. You don't learn too much on a project that goes perfectly.
That's right.
So where did the kind of idea to go get back into, or not get back into, but get a taste of the pre-construction side? When did that come in your career? And I see then that you did the MBA in 2009. How was that?
Yeah, so pre-construction and an overall appreciation for the front end of the business. Front end being what it takes to ultimately compete and win work, as well as support the work through the pre-construction phase, the estimating, the design management, up until the job becomes just strictly a on-site construction physical effort. I'd always appreciated it, and always was either pulled in or inserted myself into the pre-construction, or whenever we did bids, even while I was juggling my project management duties for other projects. Always interested, always knew that that was where you can have the greatest impact to the long-term success of the project and the endeavor, and really wanted to make sure I understood the business from the very beginning all through its entire life cycle, and not just be focused solely on operations. So, that is how I really started my career. And that was informal. Not many people were doing it. And to this day, I think there's a disproportionate focus on people going into construction and going into the operations side of the business. And there's less focus, or there's less people making a career out of the front end of the business. So I really am glad that I did what I did, because I learned so much over the years. And ultimately, when I, became a division leader, having that skill, that knowledge, and that appreciation for, what is really the business side of the business, I think made me a better, strategist, certainly a better planner and leader, and then also better at serving the client, and ultimately delivering the results that the clients were expecting and paying for.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we deal with estimators pre-construction mainly, but anybody that hasn't, any estimators especially that haven't experienced the field, it's one thing that our clients say is a must. I mean, if you can't actually sit down and build it in your head, or build some sort of model in your head before estimating it, it can be very, very difficult. So that sort of background, I mean, it's imperative, especially on the operations side. Good. So when do you think was the aha moment, or the penny dropping moment, where you thought, you know what, ConCntric, this is when I first thought about ConCntric and the importance of pre-construction?
I don't know if there was any one singular moment. I think it was building up. Again, being involved in the front end with our projects, both on the East Coast, and then when I later moved to the West Coast, in the interaction with the clients, and appreciating from a developer's perspective how their pro forma works, and everything that goes on the finance side of getting a project up and running. And then ultimately moving up to San Francisco to ultimately lead the expansion of what was really a one project. It was hardly an office, but it was a one project at a time outpost, and really having the opportunity to kind of spread my entrepreneurial wings. And that was at the same time you mentioned my MBA. It was the same time I was also getting my MBA at USC, and being among a group of folks that weren't from my industry, and everybody sharing. We had people from the entertainment industry, from the healthcare industry, from you name it. We had a couple of ex-F-18 fighter pilots, just a great mix, and everybody bringing different perspectives. It really was kind of broadening in terms of the horizons and the way you think. And so, the whole idea of learning from other industries, applying those practices, and realizing how construction was getting so far behind the curve year in and year out, just because there's the margins are very slim, and the inability really to afford reinvestment to grow and automate and do the things that other industries have been doing for years with significant investments. I just started to really appreciate the challenges that the industry was dealing with today, and what those challenges ultimately will, become in the future if something isn't really done to address them. And then from that point on, as I was, growing the Northern California portion of our business, expanding up into Seattle, and then taking the entire Western Division and really trying to do something very special with that, like we had done in San Francisco and Seattle. It was just, it was thrilling. It was very entrepreneurial. And then I just felt that it was time for me, with, a new set of challenges, to see what I could do to affect that kind of impact on the industry, not maybe just one company or one project. So, I think over time, to answer your question, it was this evolving realization or awakening that I can very clearly see what the challenges are now and what they will be for the industry. And with my background, having been in the business for 26 years and knowing it like the back of my hand, I just felt I had a much better chance than most to solve it, and solve it in the right way that other builders will benefit from.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it's all about, sharing knowledge and making sure everyone can benefit from it. And give us a quick overview of ConCntric, what it's going to do. I know you're just out of the beta stage, is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So give
So,
us an overview. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, ConCntric is a platform that will service all of the different facets, all of the different workflows and processes that make up pre-construction. I think most people who don't really know the industry equate pre-construction to estimating, and they don't realize that, estimating is one critical element of pre-construction, but there's so many other things that have to be addressed, have to be thought through, that affect the estimate or affect the outcome, and it's not just the numbers. So having all of those disparate workflows in one common platform is really what our focus is, so that way the pre-construction phase of a project can ultimately become much more predictable in its outcomes for clients and for the builder and for the architect, and really becomes this true sandbox that we're bringing all three critical stakeholders together to work without barriers of separate systems that don't talk to each other or even their own motivations. If we can bring everybody together in a much more collaborative format, drawing from a single source of truth of data and timetables, et cetera, everybody's going to benefit. Because right now, I think in the industry, as you really take a hard look at projects, their success, how the teams come together, it's very infrequent that everybody wins. I think the more norm is that, maybe there's a winner and then maybe there's a lot of losers, or in my book, I don't think anybody's truly winning if you really set that against the bar of what it really could be if you had the tools, and if the talent that we do have in the industry had access to those tools, could be much more significant in terms of positive outcomes, really where that talent is focused, and ultimately everybody then starts to win.
Very good. So you're basically bringing, because it is almost like a three-legged stool. You've got the architect, you've got the owner, and you've got the general contractor. So you're basically bringing them all together, working off one platform, seeing what's happening almost live. Would that be right? Like any changes that are made, any suggestions that are made is being seen live by the other two?
Ideally, yes. I mean, we want everybody to come into ConCntric when they're doing anything related to the planning or the front end of the project, whether it's design, whether it's the owner trying to check in on their soft costs or the overall health of the project, and the builder at all levels, whether it's the leader of the company or the estimator or pre-construction professional that's really working in the details of the project. Everybody can come and do their respective roles on the platform, and again, draw from that single source of truth of information. We think everybody's going to be more efficient, better. There's going to be less conflict because you're not arguing over whose data or whose information is right. It should be generally shared. I mean, there's sensitive information that each stakeholder has every right to, have, to themselves. And that's obviously something we will cater to. But at the same time, the vast majority of what we do, there's really no secret sauce between different general contractors or how we do things. It's really same process. Everybody's got a different take or flavor or a different look in terms of format. But, the vast majority of the data, respecting everybody's, privacy and information and proprietary information. But generally, a lot of that stuff can be anonymized and be useful to make the outcomes better for everybody without eliminating any competitive advantage.
Yeah, Steve, I totally agree. If we can get especially, we talk about the three-legged stool, the architect, the owner, and the general contractor. If we can get them on the same platform speaking to each other, it'll be a hell of an achievement. But just give me an idea, is this going to be driven from the GC side?
Primarily, yes, especially in the beginning stages. The GC is the one that the owner's bringing on earlier and earlier. So we've seen a huge shift in the industry over the last 15, 20 years where people are recognizing having the contractor in that three-legged stool provides better outcomes because the contractor is working along with the designer to both design and make sure that the budget is managed. But there's a ton of work that the GC ultimately has to do to properly plan the project, et cetera. And really the owner and the architect in many cases are really consumers of that information, but not necessarily the generator of the information. So we really want to be helping everybody and serving everybody in their different ways. First, the general contractor having to really get into the weeds and the nuts and bolts, building up not just the estimate, but the plan of how you're going to build it, schedule, logistics, what are the other strategies and risks out there that have to be contemplated, and those in turn should be factored into the estimate, et cetera. But then the consuming of the information is another big gap in the industry where an owner, an architect engaging with the builder and wanting to understand where is the project from a planning stage, the way that information is otherwise pushed to them is really one of many missing links. And we're also looking to address that as well. So, we're excited because I think the general contractor has a huge role in the success of these projects, as does the architect and as does the owner. And they all have their own unique workflows and processes, which over time we will address all of them. But we really wanted to start first with the general contractor because we see that that's probably the most acute pain point. And it's a pain for the general contractor, and that same pain for the general contractor extends itself to the owner and to the architect in that situation. So if we can solve it there, then instantly all three parties are benefiting.
Yeah, because if you think about it, before ConCntric, the only way of collaborating or speaking to one another would have been maybe the chief estimator or the business development guy ringing the owner or ringing the architect, giving them an update on this, and you're kind of leaving that down to the human to do it. Whereas that kind of, am I right in saying that kind of removes it? If they want any information, they just jump on the platform and it's there.
That's right. And it's also put in the context in the proper context that it should. And that's where I think ConCntric, we have an advantage in that with my background and being a former consumer of that information as well as a generator of that information. How do you prepare the data in a way that it can be used and sorted and filtered and pulled up and queried in a way that it's put into proper context to help owners make critical decisions on their projects? It can guide the designer to design within budget, but be guided by the budget as a working tool, as well as the GC in many different ways of de-risking the project for all parties, especially them, ways to also leverage the benefits that they are, the value add that they're bringing to the table, that they should also be properly rewarded for. So it also should enhance not only the owner's ROI on their asset, but it should also enhance the margin of the service providers, being the GC and the architect as well.
Very good.
There's a huge efficiency element here, or inefficiency, if you think about that as a factor among the human talent that is in the industry, particularly on the professional side. You know, we are now experiencing the baby boomers who, you know, they have an immense amount of institutional knowledge. They just have that experience that, you know, they can generally get pretty close on gut calls because it's years and years of that experience. Well, they're all retiring, and a lot of that knowledge hasn't been captured or institutionalized in any scalable way. And we have, unfortunately, over the last 20 years, not been able to recruit talent, young talent, into the industry at the rate and early enough in which you could replace those valuable baby boomers leaving kind of in kind. And so we have, you know, a growing deficit of both headcount and experience and knowledge that year after year is only getting deeper as far as deficit. And at the same time, what another challenge the industry is facing is the fact that the US population, and you can extend this globally, but the US population is projected to grow 25% in the next 4 decades. So we're talking about adding almost 80 million more people to the roster of the United States. And, you know, what that is going to require is more housing, more schools, more hospitals, more of everything. At the same time, we have the infrastructure of the country as a point where it's way past its shelf life. And I think we're going to see this surge in a need to react and address that. And that's trillions and trillions of dollars of reconstruction that has to occur just to get us back to par. So if you layer those two things, which, you know, sends that curve going northward pretty steeply, at the same time as the construction professional headcount and experience and knowledge is going in the opposite direction, that deficit and that gap between those two trend lines gets bigger and bigger as we go. And I don't think it's a realistic thought to be able to recruit your way out of that problem for the industry. And I think there's a very significant opportunity to address that with technology, not to replace people at all. It's really to complement them and to free them up to do what the human talent should be doing, which is thinking, using judgment, relationships, and just the thought work behind the planning. Because right now our people are working at, you know, all of our customers and everybody that we get feedback with. Some people will tell you 20, you know, I assess that inefficiency factor to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 40%. I've had people tell me they think it's closer to 50 to 60%. But ultimately, when you ask these same customers, and on average, from a capacity standpoint of that human capital to really support the work that the companies would like to have in terms of backlog and revenue, they always feel like they're 33% lighter than what they should be to be able to either do a good job or take on more to achieve their goals. Well, you know, do the math. If you could offset that inefficiency factor by augmenting the human capital with a tool that makes them more efficient by a factor of 30 or 40%, you know, you've made a huge dent in that overall deficit that I just mentioned. So I'm a big believer, and it played a huge role in my decision to go down the path that I am, is that I think technology is really not the silver bullet, but it's one of the bigger bullets. And how do we solve this industry problem in terms of headcount and experience to be able to build everything that will need to be built in the coming years?
Yeah, and I mean, Steve, everyone that's coming out of college right now, or even in the last 10 or 15 years, they're used to using technology in every aspect of their life anyway. So it should be no different in the construction world. And just on that, you mentioned you driving this. Is it just yourself? Have you got a board of directors? How's the company set up?
We're a pretty early stage startup. It's myself and my co-founding partner, who is not from the industry, and intentionally that was done because I also think that the things that have been built for the industry, and it typically applies to most B2B solutions, they can become overly complicated. They require a lot of training. And we said, if we want to do this, let's do it right, and let's make it as powerful as a B2B platform needs to be, but as user-friendly and easy to use as any of our household products that we're using these days, like the iPhone. You can pick it up and just start using it. 2-year-olds are using iPads. So how do we make a B2B platform feel and function like more of a B2C oriented consumer application or product? And that's where my partner Dave is brilliant. And so what we're developing in this partnership is this really easy to use platform that makes the very complex and complicated iterative workflows that occur in pre-construction very easy and nimble for the users to work through, and not have to enter data in to get data out, but really how do we help lessen the load of the human, again, playing to that inefficiency factor and how we can play a big role in offsetting that. And then we have a development team led by our VP of technology, who's just, that whole group is just best in class. They've developed some very amazing solutions and have really made what Dave and I have as ideas come into reality in a really functional, easy to use platform so far. So we're extremely happy with what we're, the path we're going down. All of the feedback has been fantastic and well received, and I give them all the credit.
Good. And I'm sure, I mean, you mentioned there you're 25 years, 26 years with Clark. What has the feedback, or who's been advising you? Has it been a surveys that you've been doing on the architect side, on the owner side? How have they been coming back about how easy it is to work, to use the UI, the interface?
Yeah, we've really taken a very personal approach where we started with a beta cohort of very early adopters, people that really recognized the pain and really wanted to be a part of the journey with us and provide feedback. I think they like the fact that they don't have to start from a blank canvas as if they were working with maybe technology folks that don't know anything about the industry, but are still trying to help solve the pain. Basically we're coming to them with really the schematics that are 85% there, and they're able to fine tune it, and they offer us invaluable feedback and confirmation that we're on the right path. But, each one of those, and as part of that beta cohort, we've kept it small enough to where that feedback is really one-on-one sessions as we're, they're test driving and literally driving the car. But as we watch and observe them driving the car, we are like fanatically focused on the intuitive aspects of what we want them to be able to do without thinking about it, and certainly without requiring any training. So as they use it and we observe the use, we're picking up on the things that we can adjust and tweak to make it that much easier and much more efficient in the use of their time. So, we've just got some fantastic, not just GCs, but we also have owners providing their perspective, and we have some of the best world-renowned architects and engineers that are also providing their perspectives. And most of it is really from the perspective of them as consumers of the information. But not too long, from now, we'll be in a position where we're also building the tools and how they manage their business as an architect or as an owner in the context of a construction project, and ultimately the things that we can build that help make them more efficient. Again, still drawing from all of the elements that are part of this, single source of truth repository.
Brilliant. And then the other one that kind of caught my eye was the data-driven aspect, the machine learning. Give me an idea of how that works.
Right. So machine learning and AI, these are all the buzzwords today, but they all rely on data. And I
Mm.
think you could come up with the most brilliant AI solution, but they're all looking to suck data from some form of a pool in a way that they can make, they being the AI application, can make sense of it. The problem with construction is, or our industry, is the fact that really that data isn't centralized. A lot of it is seriously trapped in Excel workbooks. It's not centralized, nor is it structured. So your ability to pull that data and have it properly structured and characterized to then mean something and be applied by whatever that machine learning or AI solution might be, really, until we have that, we're not going to be able to take full advantage of the machine learning and AI future potential that I think the industry will definitely benefit from. So we're the starting point for that. And by digitizing the workflows in a way that is not just digitizing a current practice, whether it's a good practice or a bad practice, but digitizing the workflows in a way that it's capturing the best practices from our beta cohort and others. Now you've got a great um, uh, boat raiser, if you will, because every company's got A players and B players and folks that aren't as strong as those A players. But if you can not standardize by being rigid, but if you can really um, institutionalize those best practices, now everybody's playing up at a much higher level. You're going to get better outcomes. You're going to have less risk. But at the same time, you're also leveraging the data. It's structured, and then it's easy to pull up that data and use it for more forward-looking applications. And I think that's where, when you think about construction, you do a lot of the same type of projects over and over. You do a lot of different projects over and over, but they're also drawing from common components. And if, the failure of the industry to date of really capturing that data in a way that it can be more useful in the future, that's an area that we're keenly focused on, because once that data is structured and characterized and you can start using it to project forward whatever the cost should be on a range basis, or rates of production of even your own work as a pre-construction professional, it's limitless what you will ultimately be able to do with that data to make you smarter, to avoid risks and pitfalls, and kind of benefit from that flywheel effect of, after every project and cycling through 5 or 6, you're getting smarter each and every time. And the platform will get smarter each and every time, as well as we deploy machine learning tools, because those machine learning tools are what's going to really drive the reduction of that inefficiency factor I was speaking about before. Because if we can ultimately teach the platform to do a lot of these menial, mundane tasks that these very expensive front-end professionals are having to do manually themselves over and over, the platform can do it. Think about how many man hours you're saving. I mean, the return on investment is, many, 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 many times once you can start achieving and addressing that efficiency factor of your human capital, which is your most valuable asset any GC owner or architect has.
Yeah, and we touched on it briefly as well at the very beginning before we started recording. It's going to be a case of, this is not going to replace people. This is going to work alongside and just be more efficient for the pre-construction, the estimating team, whoever it may be.
Yes, I mean, you think about it's a kind of a force multiplier or an amplifier. We're not looking, I mean, we have too few people in the industry. So, to even think that you could or would replace them, just as doesn't make sense. What you need to do is magnify or amplify their talents and free them up from these really menial tasks that they're having to do, just basic math and calculations, but they're having to do it over and over again. Migrate data from one point solution into an Excel workbook so that they could actually do something different with it. It's just amazing how far behind the industry has let itself become with respect to the lack of what other industries have very successfully done, whether it's the financial sectors, you name it. Everybody has done even agriculture has just done a wonderful job of, automating and leveraging things that, can be done by a computer and freeing up, the valuable people in the industry to do the better, the smarter things and become more efficient on all counts. So yeah, we're really excited about the power that all of the users will ultimately get out of the platform, and it's really amplifying, which is kind of how we came about the name ConCntric. Because if you think about that one effort or that one drop of data and those concentric rings that amplify or emanate out of that that one instance, it just becomes more and more powerful and beneficial to everybody on a 360-degree basis. So that's really what we're after.
Steve, it sounds really exciting. So what's next? What's the next few months, the next few years looking like at ConCntric?
It's interesting. We've been at this, in terms of building the platform for approximately half of a year. We really have some great momentum. Obviously, COVID is something that we're all going through right now, which certainly hasn't helped. But in many ways, it's really somewhat accelerated things for us, because people, particularly in the GC side, we're so used to face-to-face meetings. When you're sitting down with your owner, with the architect, it's rarely just a phone call doing an update. If you do it right, you're trying to walk everybody through, here's where the budget stands today after we've just estimated the most recently published design set, and we're either over budget or under budget. It's typically over budget these days, it seems. But ultimately, you're having a conversation, but you're doing it face to face. And I think people have immediately, like literally overnight, been forced to adopt the remote work kind of life or work style. And I think everybody has realized that, a video conference call is merely the conduit to connect two people, but the information and how it's portrayed on a single screen and how do you do that efficiently. I think everybody who's been exposed to our platform has seen how you're taking all of these disparate pieces of information and very succinctly compiling it into really what is the message, what is the trend of where the budget has been, what are our financial goals for the project, where have we been, where are we now, and then what are our options going forward, and being able to look at that in a very concise way, and then have a very real-time dynamic tool that allows you to figure out what is that path forward and what's the optimal arrangement that we should be tracking. And really, that's just our first module. And as we build out the platform, we've gotten great feedback from all three representative stakeholders about what they would like to see as we continue to build out the platform. Because, pre-construction is not just one thing. So we are just, starting, but it's going to be an interesting and fun path, because so much of what makes a pre-construction effort successful is really, there's so much out there that hasn't been addressed at all, and people are having to create ad hoc Excel, workbook type solutions, or oftentimes it's just not convenient, and it's too much of a time consumer to even address that critical workflow, much less systematize it. So a lot of this stuff isn't even being done as a best practice. And so once you can make that more convenient, and people are doing that more religiously and as a matter of discipline, the risk level goes way down for everybody. And also the upside, because as you eliminate risk, you certainly are able to drive costs down. Everybody's returns on their effort and whatever they expect are more easily achieved. It's a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and the thing that I like, Steve, I mean, the fact that it's all on one platform. Is there any competitors out there at the moment for ConCntric, or is it a case of there's a technology for each workflow that they're not aggregated?
Yeah, so our approach is really not to be a point solution and really not to delve into a space that is currently underserved, or I'm sorry, that is being served by others, because there's so much of what is going on in pre-construction that is not served at all.
Hmm.
So, really our strategy is to be an integrator. So any best of class estimating technologies, point solutions, and there's a couple out there. We just want to integrate with them so that way we can properly contextualize the message, the information, but be that single source of truth of the data, not just estimating outputs, but everything that goes on to the proper planning of a project that's going through this pre-construction phase.
Brilliant. And when are we going to see you launch, Steve? Do you have a time frame?
Yeah, it'll be this summer that you'll start to
Nice.
see this more widely available. We've wanted to stay very close with our original customers and get their feedback and build this and do it right and not rush to market with something that's
Hmm.
not totally right. But yeah, this summer is where we're looking to have this more widely used by the market. And over time, uses and functions catering to the uh, owner type and the architect type will also start to roll out. We were really excited speaking at the Advancing Pre-Construction Conference, and it was slated for May, and we were really excited about that. Obviously, COVID set in, and it's now been pushed to November. And hopefully, if things go well, they'll still be able to have it in November. But at these events, we're really also looking forward to engaging um, all of the people in the industry at these events so that they can see what we're developing and also be a part of it.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, that would be great. Timing wise, November would be nice if you could get in front of as many people as possible. But in the meantime, just so people know, you've just launched your website. So what I will do underneath any of the content that I do put out on this podcast, I will put it down below so they can click on it and get a more in-depth look at ConCntric. Just quickly, if someone did want to reach out to you with a question or an inquiry, where's the best place to get in contact with you?
Through the website, we'll have
Good.
all of that information there, and we welcome and would love emails, phone calls, whatever it is. We just we're excited about the impact that we're going to have on the industry. We're excited about making this a very integrated process with our customers, and a shared knowledge both ways with my experience, their experience. We think that's a very well balanced way to serve the industry, both from a builder's perspective, the owner's perspective, and the architect's perspective. So exciting times. And, I think really a lot of this is converging all at the right time, because I think everybody is starting to see the need to embrace technology. I think I'm encouraged by more and more dialogue about how pre-construction at the CEO level, at all levels, needs to be a higher priority for companies, because that's truly where the table is set for success. And if you can set the table right, the execution of the job and kind of the build operation phase of the project can be done more predictably with far fewer issues and far fewer changes, et cetera. So, and I think everybody's appreciation for the power of data and what that data can do for you if properly harnessed and structured in a way that it can be forward looking and make you smarter and complement your decision making process, so you're making more informed, precise decisions. We think is going to make a huge impact in a very short period of time.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I mean, any GC that you walk into a room with and you turn around and you say, listen, collaboration with architect and owner, risk is going to go through the floor. And then also you're going to be able to kind of back up more projects. I mean, I can't see many kind of turning you and telling you to go back out the door, really.
Yeah, and we're excited to partner with all of the other great folks that are developing products to solve the multitude of pains being experienced in construction. So we're excited about what we can all do together in an integrated fashion because there's so much fertile ground that we need to tackle, and we need to tackle it as fast as possible because the industry is so far behind the curve that we need to catch up. And the only way to catch up is, be all in and make it happen as fast as possible because of what the future holds.
Exactly. And we talked about it before as well, collaboration, working together, not holding anything back, just literally putting your cards on the table. This is what we can do. Let's do it together, not kind of sitting in your wee office on your own trying to come up with the magic sauce. The magic sauce is brains together, construction knowledge retention within the market, and getting the best technology to partner with that.
That's right. That's right. And do it in a way that it's much more convenient and more efficient for everybody to get their job done.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I love it, Steve. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks,
Well,
Gareth.
listen, thank you very much. I know the audience will love this insight into ConCntric. I know we're probably dying to get a look at it, especially the demo. I'm sure quite a lot of our audience as well will be at the conference in November. So hopefully, well, I will be there anyway. So I'll definitely see you there. But if they have any questions, again, the website will be detailed below. So get in touch with Steve, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Gareth. Appreciate it. And anything I can do to help.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.